Do you ever sing classical tunes like you sing pop tunes?
Yeah, for sure. Especially like Garetsky and a lot of like choir music, Lasso, which is more church music and choir. For sure, like it's stuck in your head. Chopin is gonna be stuck in your head. There's lots of beautiful melodies and stuff. So yeah, for sure.
So what's your favorite? What's the #1 hit song in the classical area?
My favorite piece of music is by far Nuage by Debussy. I think that's one of my, I don't know, it just transports me. And I also like, Debussy's my favorite, so there's a couple. Like I love Nuage. It's kind of a tie between Nuage and I never can say the title, but Prélude to l'Après-midi avec un fond. I always forget about it. It's just more because of the melody combination of orchestration. It just transports you somewhere else. So,
how does it go?
That one I never can sing properly, so I can't sing that one. It's too complicated. It's more that place, but I mean Nuage is more like. But the voicings are like amazing harmony that just feel somewhere else, which I really like.
So you're gonna play at Cross-linx?
I would like to do Nuage. I think that would be a great challenge to do with the band. We did it a bit with the concept about where we started, where Simon had this kind of very like big crush guitar sound, which was very synthetic. It started off the Nuage and the orchestra came in over it, which was really nice. But we didn't have the time to develop the idea. And I think with the strings, I think we will have the time to work out that philosophy of, because if I were to put Debussy, I guess in this era, and if I would picture him working in this era, I don't know if necessarily the notes change, but concept of arrangement, I think he'd be someone very inspired by electronic influences, because when he started doing his arrangements, he would do things where he'd take really real life, like a carriage passing by, he'd like do weird chromatic tones to try to emulate sound design. And if you listen to Nuage or La Mer as a great example, you hear the waves crashing, not by notes, but really by the arrangements. So it's very really kind of visual arrangements, so I think he'd probably be really inspired by electronic music and just we're dealing with sound.
The way you talk about it, you bring it very close to this era.
Well, I think in a way, Impressionism and Eric Satie, all those guys were very much a part of inspiring the guys who started developing synths and minimalism. So I think that they definitely took concentrating on notes and chords, and then started to really work on building the arrangements to be really unmusical and more sound effects. And I think that there's Mahler and there's Berlioz as well that are really important, but I think Debussy was like another step in terms of this crazy. Well, the planets by Holst has a bit of element of that. Like when you get to Neptune, you feel cold, get into your bones and stuff. But I think that definitely Debussy's really, it's very sound effecty. Sometimes his melodies are not that melodic and they crash into the next chord progression like a wave in the matter. And I think he's a very literal. I guess Liszt started by doing that a bit when he started doing his what's it called, the symphonic poems, where he started to try to make orchestrated poems, and they started to try to be outside of breaking the tradition of making an arrangement that's musical necessarily, and bringing the orchestration into more sound effects and making them as part of the lyrics. Nuage looks and sounds like the clouds going by. The voicings give you the feeling of what it looks like, or La Mer, or the first beginning, those big low ends, the big swells. They sound like the ocean, but they look like the ocean too. And I think that, I guess for me, I find it inspiring. But there's lots of composers at the time that started to push those boundaries. Because Shostakovich or let's say Stravinsky was totally different, because they were still in a very much a way of dealing with music equations, but trying to find random music equations to break out of the box. Where I think Debussy did it in a way of breaking out of the box in a much more poetic way, where he emulated other sounds and broke the barriers and in a very poetic way, not a very systematic way.
I'm going to interfere now.
Yeah. These are all my interpretations, so classical guy might hate what I'm saying maybe right now. This guy's full of shit, so I don't want to burn my tail or nothing, but that's just my interpretation.
Are you a pop musician?
I play songs,
You seem to know your classical tunes.
I'm much more inspired by classical music than pop music.
Where would you be without classical music as a musician?
I remember I was getting out of CJ, at the end of CJ I was studying jazz and I knew pop and I didn't know that much classical music, and then when I heard I started hearing classical music and I started to get my itch back because I did it when I was a kid. I don't know, and then the combination of that of hearing pop music, I was kind of I needed the two to make it work. One or the other didn't really...
Is that what you try to do? To make them work together?
Well, I don't see classical music as a finished thing, you know, like I don't know.
Isn't it that?
I think it's that in a way that people treat it like that way, in a way that, you know, when you're schooled, in the way that the infrastructure around classical music, I think, is its biggest problem, you know, like my favorite classical nights I ever spent, we used to go to this loft, and there was like a bunch of string players, and everybody, it would be a party where people would bring partitions, and everybody get drunk and play different classical pieces, and you'd be sitting there drinking and listening to classical music outside of the big la-di-da-di place. And it just became much more about like the music instead of the circumstance around the music, and it was by far more touching. And I think that I feel like the circumstance that classical music is in the way they come on stage and the whole. I think it kills. It's killing classical music because I don't think Beethoven or Mozart or any of these famous guys are like these clean and proper guys. I mean, most of them are fucking drunks and kind of crazy creatures, you know. And
bit like you.
Well.
You wouldn't call yourself Beethoven.
I wouldn't call that, but I'm just saying that I just think that people, it gives this thing where like classical music is this very straight and conservative type of music where I think it's dealing with the same emotions and same things that pop music does in a very different way. But I don't picture like Gareki and Abelpart is very conservative. You know, they're very kind of crazy people who are very inspiring and very kind of weird and awkward and. But then, like, you know, even when you do, like, the way you go out with an orchestra and the way everybody walks in and the whole formality, I think, destroys the music because I think it takes away the human aspect of the music and makes it like this old, traditional thing. Where I don't think it's that old, and I don't think it's about that, you know. I think it's about making beautiful emotions happen, and I think they lose all that crap. It'd be a lot more fun to go see a classical show.
So now you start working with the Amsterdam Sinfonietta?
Yeah.
It's those guys. They wear the suits. They do all that.
Yeah, but
where do you connect?
I think it's because for some reason the classical world does it that way, so everybody just does it that way. It's not their fault or anything like that, but like I don't think it helps the music.
How do you connect with them?
Well, we have lots in common in music. You know, it's like when we did the concert about, we have lots of common in music tastes, and you know, I think even it's kind of nice when they play with the band, they don't have to deal with such a serious way. They get to feel more relaxed, but still play the same music, and I think that I don't have that much of a different approach, you know, in a way, whether, okay, we play pop music because parts of the songs are simpler, and I mean, if we go back to Haydn, you know, if you go back to classical music, there's still simple songs as well, you know, like, it's just a language that's developed out of that music. They're not two different things. They don't like, it's not like classical music, then classical music died and pop music happened, you know, it's a complete transition from like classical music and then into the 20th century it gets a little crazy, so when jazz comes and then it becomes like show tunes a bit, and then show tunes turn into, and then mixes with blues, and then, you know, it's a weird curving thing connecting the dots with all of them, and then eventually it comes to pop music. But it's not like it comes out of nowhere, as a guy never heard.
Okay, so I see the line behind me. Where's it going?
Well, I think...
Will they meet again?
Well, they constantly meet, and then they get far away from each other. Like, I would say that it's a band like Radiohead is where classical music came back in again to meet pop music, you know? Like, all the chord progressions, the harmonic is much more, let's say, traditional classical music than it is traditional pop music, you know. But even in a band, the Beatles, you know, half their arrangements are, you know, these orchestral classical middle transitions, you know, like Day in the Life has this incredible orchestral middle part, or, you know, Penny Lane, you know, like, there's lots of influences of classical music in the Beatles that, and nobody ever really talks about it because Beatles is so pop, but nobody ever asks the question, well, half of it sounds really classical to me, you know. So I mean, it's kind of, I just think it's a bit ridiculous to say that, separate the two as much for me. Okay.
You're gonna write new pieces for this concert?
Yeah.
Is that a different process?
Well, because I mean, I have different instruments to work with, so it's a different sound. So for sure, it takes into consideration you can do things you can't do without a big string ensemble, you know, for sure. And I like to write. I always wanted to write a piece based on Blind Willie Johnson's, this old blues writer that sent this music to space in the Voyager satellite. You know, the one on the golden disc. And I started writing a piece that was supposed to be for orchestra and guitar about sending this blind bluesman into a satellite to talk to aliens. I find it's a very funny, weird idea. So I always wanted to do an orchestral piece based on that.
But is it is it a different process making music with a band and making music with a?
Because you're in arrangement land, you know, when you have like 25 or when you have a lot of instruments with you, a lot of your time is spent on dreaming about, you know, you write your melodies and you can write your structure of song, which is very similar to any way you write a pop song. But when it comes to the actual arrangement and putting it together, you're gonna get into you're gonna have to pretend to hear it in your head. And it's not like we sit with a band and find a sound. Like you have to do a lot of process in your head and on a piano to dream about what kind of colors you're going to use in terms of the arrangement and what colors you want to bring out, and so it becomes like a bit more of something you can build in your head more than just playing piano and singing.
So it's going to be a surprise for you as well.
No, I do it often.
As soon as you play it.
But yeah, that's one of the best parts of it. It's kind of really rewarding when you dream up a piece and you write it down and then you hear it. It's really mind blowing and it makes you want to cry every time. You're like, oh wow, you know, like it's like 45 people playing my song. And it's like so powerful that, you know.
Or does it make you want to cry because it sounded totally different in your head?
Well, it's not that it's so different. It's like when you write something on a piece of paper and then you hear it for the first time. It's like when back in the old days when you take photos and you print them, you're like, oh, that excitement of like that distance before you get the. It always makes the the feeling when it happens. It's really special. You know, so.
Sweet old luscious life, celebrate your dreams.